Hello, welcome to this video lesson which is focusing on the poem by Andrew Waterhouse called Climbing My Grandfather and which appears on the AQA Love and Relationships Anthology. Okay, as with all these poetry video lessons, I'm going to focus on some key bits of information to begin with before going through a line-by-line analysis on the poem. Right, so a bit of context. Waterhouse was a teacher, an environmentalist, a poet and a musician. And he sadly committed suicide aged 42 in 2001. So what's the poem about? Well, the poem is about a boy getting to know his grandfather. The narrator imagines climbing his grandfather using the extended metaphor of climbing a mountain. It has a positive and loving tone. The title evokes the image of a toddler climbing over his grandfather. It also implies the grandparent's higher status in life as experienced. And the key themes covered: family, love, childhood, and admiration. Method and meaning. I'm going to say this in every video. Method and meaning. This is how to achieve the higher marks on this question. Well, in fact, on most of the questions on the literature paper. The examiner's looking for you to identify in this section like poetic devices, but not just that. You have to explore what these devices mean, what the effect of the use of these devices is, and that's what secures you the higher marks. Method and meaning, and I'll give you some examples of that as we go. The poem is a single stanza. There's your method. It's a single stanza designed deliberately to resemble the long journey of ascending the mountain. So there's your meaning. It is written in the present tense, following the narrator's journey up the mountain as he's imagining it. The lines are full of enjorment and susurra. There's your meaning. There's your method, to reflect the ebb and flow of the climb, plus life itself perhaps. Okay, so climbing a mountain is there's your meaning. Climbing a mountain is not the easiest of tasks, but getting to know someone isn't the easiest of tasks. And there's give and take on both sides. You have some difficult moments, and then you come through them, and you reach the summit, and you get to know them, and they become lifelong friends, or you get to know your grandparent as an independent individual person, not just as your grandfather. So that's the kind of extended metaphor that travels journey through the poem. The structure of the poem follows a climber's progress up the mountain, with each line seemingly representing a higher level, closer to fully knowing his grandfather. Okay, language and imagery. So it's form, structure, language and imagery. These are the areas that the examiner is looking for you to focus in on. The extended metaphor of the grandfather as a mountain reflects how stable and permanent he is in the child's life. So there's your method, and there's your meaning. A mountain's a solid, it's not going anywhere, and so that's implying that comparing the grandfather to a mountain is implying that the grandfather's not going anywhere. The grandfather's a solid, stable influence in the child's life. The child is full of admiration and awe for his grandfather. He has a childlike fascination for him, reflected in the attention to detail, the curiosity each part of the journey holds for him. This love is reciprocated through the patience the grandfather shows in return. Told from the viewpoint of the child, there is a silent wisdom about the grandfather. The frequent use of specific climbing terminology implies the adventures life holds, but the reassurance that the grandfather will always be this rock of support for his grandson. Right, okay, so before I go through the line-by-line analysis, just in the black text there, some general observations that apply throughout the poem. So it's written in the present tense, first person. Enjorment used to reflect the scaling of a mountain. Enjorment is when one line carries on to the next, so that's the journey continuing. The extended metaphor of a grandfather as a mountain, and one long stanza to mirror the one long journey in climbing the mountain, but in getting to know the grandfather as well. So these are observations that are relevant throughout. So I won't necessarily draw attention to them as we find them. Right. Okay. So I decided to do it free, without a rope or net. First, the old brogues, dusty and cracked. An easy scramble onto his trousers, pushing into the weave, trying to get a grip. By the overhanging shirt, I changed direction, traverse along his belt to an earth-stained hand. The nails are splintered and give good purchase. The skin of his finger is smooth and thick like warm ice. On his arm I discover the glassy ridge of a scar. Place my feet gently in the old stitches and move on. Okay, so I decide present tense, so the reader feels like they're witnessing this ascent. Without a rope or net, this could reflect the excitement of the journey, plus the confidence and trust in his grandfather. that his grandfather will protect him regardless. He's not going to let him fall. So it kind of implies a closeness and intimacy in their relationship. An easy scramble onto his trousers, pushing into the weave, trying to get a grip. Metaphor for trying to get to know his grandfather, trying to get a grip. So he's unsure at the moment, who exactly his grandfather is, but he's getting to know him. And it's an exciting adventure as well. Sosora, which is any punctuation before the end of the line. And here we've got to an earth-stained hand. Sosora throughout to reflect the stages of getting to know his grandfather. So, each full stop could reflect another phase in getting to know his grandfather. His fingers is smooth and thick like warm ice. So that's a simile. It's also an oxymoron. Warm ice. Well, we can't really get warm ice. They're kind of two contrasting ideas. To reflect how his grandfather isn't cold like ice. So that's a warm image. It's you get ice and snow on the top of a mountain, but with the grandfather, it's warm. It's not uncomfortable. It's not negative. It's a positive image. On his arm, I discover. So this is the progress is being made in getting to know him. And my feet gently in the old stitches. So the grandson is sensitive and doesn't focus on what might be painful of past experiences. So there's a bond, a strong bond between them. You can see that developing as the poem progresses. Okay, on to the final part of the poem. Oh, one more. Okay. At his still firm shoulder, I rest for a while in the shade, not looking down, for climbing has its dangers, then pull myself up the loose skin of his neck to a smiling mouth to drink among teeth. Refreshed, I cross the screed cheek to stare into his brown eyes, watch a pupil slowly open and close. Then up over the forehead, the wrinkles well spaced and easy, to his thick hair, soft and white at this altitude, reaching for the summit, where gasping for breath I can only lie, watching clouds and birds circle, feeling his heat, knowing the slow pulse of his good heart. Okay, I rest for a while. So dovetails climbing imagery with common image of a child sitting on an adult's shoulder. I've had my daughter on my shoulders many a time when she was a lot younger, and I'm sure you guys listen to this can recall times you were on your parents' shoulders. So it's a kind of a happy occurrence. To a smile, I then pull myself up the loose skin of his neck to a smiling mouth to drink among the teeth. That's interesting. Smiling mouth. Grandfather is enjoying playing with his grandsons. This is precious time the two of them spend together. Drink among his teeth, taking on board advice, wisdom of the grandfather. So it's a metaphor. Could be, the grandfather's a good storyteller, and the grandchild rather loves listening to his grandfather talk. Refreshed, so he feels better for the pearls of wisdom he gets from his grandfather. He's encouraged, he feels it's good advice, and he's ready to carry on. To his thick hair, soft and white at this altitude. So that's the kind of a metaphor for the snow and the white hair, an analogy of comparing the two of them. He reached the summit, sense of achievement. It's been hard work, but worth it. Knowing the slow pulse of his good heart. This reflects the warmth and cool closeness of their relationship. Knowing, definitive language suggesting the journey is complete. He knows his grandfather better now. The short line preparing reader for the final acknowledgement. Feeling his heart, knowing the slow pulse of his good heart. And he loves his grandfather. His grandfather's a good person, and he's delighted that he has had the opportunity to get to know him. And they've obviously got a very close bond as a result of that. Okay, so that's plenty in terms of your understanding of the poem. Just a brief summary of poetic devices that you should use in your analysis. Single stanza, extended metaphor, semantic, that should be field of climbing terminology, enjambment, and susura. Useful vocab to use when analysing this poem, and I'm sure you've got your own, but here's some in case, just to make your analysis a little bit more sophisticated. Adventurous, poignant, support, reassurance, permanence, inquisitiveness, curiosity, closeness, discovery, exploration, fascination, reciprocal, and awe. And links to other poems on the Love and Relationship Anthology. Compare the bond here to the bond between the speaker and parents in Eden Rock, or from the viewpoint of child and follower, or growing up in Walking Away and Mother Any Distance. So there's plenty of scope for comparing this poem to others. Right, okay, hope you found this useful, and check in the other videos, and I'll see you there. Bye now.